Here. Cummins.
Here.
Fields. Here. Heatherly.
Here.
Rodner. Wheeler. Here. You have four. Okay. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion.
A second. Creekmore. Yes. Cummins.
Yes.
Fields.
Yes.
Heatherly.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, we are going to discuss and make any necessary recommendations regarding the Director of Schools budget plan. So I will turn it over to Ms. Fields and let her present her options.
I met, and Richard can confirm this, right now we have a 2.1 budget deficit. $2.1 million budget deficit, yeah. Definitely get that in there. There was a decrease in concentrated poverty and some of our areas of the budget, and with the increase in the equity raise for teachers, utility cost raise, increase, and the teacher raise, it equals a $2.1 million deficit. So to offset that, I have three options. And one thing to keep in mind with these options, and we knew when ESSER funding ran out, we kept we kept many of the positions. As people retired, we did not fill those positions. And the 22-23 budget year, the 23-24 budget year, and the 24-25 budget year, I said both times we were keeping those positions. But I didn't know how long it would last because we were able to keep them longer than we had anticipated. So now we are going to have to look at cutting those positions, some of the positions. The reason they were not cut in 23-24 and 24-25 is because we moved to ESSER fund, or TISA funding. And if you all will just take one of these and pass it around, this will show our budget in 22-23, when we were still under the BEP funding formula. In 23-24, when we switched to TISA. Again, 24-25, which is what we're operating out of this current year. And then 25-26, which is our projected budget for next year. And as you can see, from 22-23 to 23-24, our budget increased $7 million. So it was easy to continue funding these positions that were already in the budget. And we went from that year doing just fine, and we operated this year with the same budget, but now we're facing a budget deficit. So I have three proposals. I do not have access to my budget to follow that these trends were occurring and that we were going to have a budget deficit. I just assumed that since we had operated 2 years in a row without a deficit, that this year would be no different. But I have found out otherwise. So one of the things to consider in keeping context is under TCA 49-1-602, any school receiving a letter grade D or F requires the Director of Schools, Finance Director, Board Chairman, and Principal to appear before the State Board of Education to explain how funding is being used to support student learning. Utilizing fund balance does not negate the need to demonstrate fiscal strategy and alignment of resources with student outcomes. So I want to stress that some of these options do include using a part of fund balance, which I have approved with Mary Ann Dursky, who is the Chief Financial Officer for the Tennessee Department of Education. And she said many districts use that for a one-time use. That does not mean we can continue to use that. It would just be kicking this situation on down the road. But what it does prevent is for our employees to find out in a timely way if their position is going to be eliminated. And that's why I would like to announce an option so that doesn't happen, and we can plan beginning in August of notifying teachers if or people in different positions that were funded by ESSER, that we are not able to maintain that. So if you will look at the green sheet of paper, that is option 1. It is use fund balance to cover the entire budget deficit. That is, Jeffrey Miller had asked me if I would prepare different options to see what would be the one that would fund everything, and then one that would restrict the most, and then we can meet somewhere in the middle. So option 1 would be to use fund balance to cover the entire budget. And our key priorities for balancing the budget is to prevent disruption to current staffing and academic programs, to preserve consistency for students, families, and employees, and allow time to study long-term cost-saving strategies and resource allocations. And to also follow Tennessee Code Annotated that would provide equitable resources to all schools so student outcomes are not, do not suffer. So the budget strategy would be to use the full use of fund balance, which at this time, when I made this proposal, was $2.8 million. I have since found out today that it is $2.1 million. Option 2 would be to follow those same key priorities while following, abiding by Tennessee Code Annotated, that we are maintaining and funding to support student achievement. But it would be to use committed funds at 1.7, which is designated funds previously set aside for specific needs, which was the sports complex at Campbell County High School. We could use the funds of 1.7 million for that, and then our projected equity savings from the 24-25 budget, that we currently are projected to have a $1.1 million savings at the end of this budget cycle. Instead of that falling to equity, mark that so we could use it to maintain the budget. That way, no staffing positions would be reduced. The third option would be to make some changes to support staff that we, or positions that we added to give extra opportunities for all schools to have a full-time counselor and a full-time PE teacher when they had originally had part-time and those positions traveled. So it would be to reduce one full-time counselor, utilize existing counselor to serve multiple schools. That would be a savings of $80,000. Reduce one full-time PE teacher, utilizing an existing PE teacher to travel between schools. That would be another $80,000. Abolish our 80-day contracted person who serves as the conducts the dyslexia screener. And that would be the responsibility to reallocate to current staff. That would be a savings of $20,000. Restructure our academic coaches that we had in place. I feel it's still necessary to keep at least 4, 2 that would travel the 5th district area, 2 that would travel to schools in districts 1 through 4. They have been trained by the Ayers Institute, and they are equipped in this area, and they also serve schools who have teachers in the educator prep programs who have not had classroom management training. They have not had data training. It would help them, it would serve to help them understand the curriculum, meet classroom management expectations, and curriculum questions. Replace 11 interventionists with 11 teaching assistants. The academic coaches would have an estimated savings of $400,000. The 11 interventionists being replaced with 11 teaching assistants would be a reduction of approximately $709,500. We would abolish 2 part-time basic skills teaching assistants based on the spiraling and the supplement, not supplant. So that would be a $32,000 savings. And the last option that I would want to do, but as Mr. Miller suggested, streamline it the most amount possible. It would look at class size, and based on class size with fewer than 10 students, combining those classes. And when we look at enrollment and class size numbers, that would affect 4 classrooms at White Oak, 1 at Wynn, and 2 at Elk Valley, for a total savings of $560,000. So the total projected savings for those cuts would be $1,881,500. A projected equity savings from the chart of accounts would be $1,100,000. So if we combined those savings, it would be a total of $2,981,500, which is certainly more than what we need after we found out the information we received today, that we just need a $2.1 million cut.
And the $2.1 million is after considering use of equity for debt service. Do you remember the specific?
It's like 467, 450,000.
Plus the new note that just issued, which gets you up closer to 800, 900,000. So it's already a proposed use of equity.
Any discussion?
I like, on the option 2, I like using the committed funds at 1.7, but you said the updated number is 2.1, so we're only $400,000 off when we do that. Can you detail what that 1.7 is?
That 1.7,
Yes,
that is
please.
what we budgeted for the sports complex at Campbell County High School.
So that and $400,000 puts us, we break even, that balances. I think that option 3, I can see, that's a dedicated effort, but the splitting or combining any classrooms, I think should be an absolute last resort. And I look at this, teachers, especially in our small schools, I don't see, they are a necessity. A sports complex is a luxury.
Those are teaching assistants, so that we lose those anyway.
Under the combined class, implement split grades.
Oh, that's a last resort.
And that's 560. So if you already got 1.7 here, you really only need 400,000. And so we can kind of put that away entirely. Where are we going to get $400,000?
Any of these here, reducing we can make these reductions. I mean, it can be you can just choose what you want to. Replacing the 11 interventionists with teaching assistants, that is what, we had teaching assistants who did, Lisa was an interventionist. That would save $709,500, or $709,500.
So replacing interventionalists with teaching assistants, using the money earmarked for sports complex, balances our budget, does not hurt our staff. Our kids get the support they need. I like that.
Madam Chairman, just for the record, I'm not a member of the committee, but I am the chairman of the board. Richard, that 1.7 million committed for the auxiliary gym, that's not 1.7, is it? And it 1.1 million?
It's closer to 1.1 million after taking out the funds for the smaller projects.
Right. So technically, that's 1.1 million that's there to spend, correct?
Yes.
Because we've spent several $100,000 on the weight room project, the scoreboard for the school. So, let's don't get caught up in that number, because that's committed, but it's not there. It's 1.1.
Well, with the 1.1, if you go back to this interventionalist to teaching assistants, that's another 700. So now we're back to 1.8.
Right.
And then 400 that you can still see.
Right.
You can just go through here and.
And then one other observation, any equity or committed funds that you would use is pushing it down the road.
Yes.
For instance, if you're going to use $1 million of equity or committed funds, that means that million automatically goes to next year's deficit. For starting out the new year with $1 million in the hole. And I'm speaking with Mr. Marlowe, you know, if, you know, we're gonna have to back up because all this refers to 2.8 million deficit, which is 2.1 now. You know, at the 2.8 figure, you know, with the inflationary costs next year, the teacher raise next year, that could easily be $3.5–4 million of the deficit that we're gonna face next year, and you've used equity down, then what are you gonna do? In my view, the only thing you have left is you either go bankrupt, or you go to the county commission and ask for a tax increase in order to balance the budget. So that's likely not to happen, because they're already giving us over maintenance of effort quite a bit. So, you know, the approach I like is, you know, you did do what I asked, and I appreciate it. You brought 3 proposals to the table. You know, when we look back in 2022-23, we had $1 million deficit, correct, Richard?
That's projected, yes.
And they were ESSER money used to balance that budget in 22-23. So you had a deficit in 22-23 that took care of temporarily by ESSER. And then you had the new TISA money come in at $7 million, which you absorbed that. And then inflationary costs, insurance, premiums, teacher raises. We have exhausted that new money, correct? So now it seems like we want to go dip into another fund, which is equity, just to get by another year. Well, that's going to run out, then what are you going to do? You're going to hit a wall to where it's going to be catastrophic for the county school system. And I don't know that we could approach the commission to get any, I just don't see it. Now, you could make a proposal to ask them, but I don't think that they're going to like that very well. Cuts are never easy, but it's just like everybody in America is facing today in your own family. If you're not making enough to spend, you have to cut back. And the issue is here is we have got more expenditures going out than we've got revenue coming in. And, you know, I think that we have to take a hard look. Now, what I would suggest, Madam Chairman, is to, I think that before you get caught up in all this, you need to recess, and you can let the director change these 2.8 back down to 2.1, and recalculate some of these proposals and come back before you get lost in all this that's not accurate tonight. I mean, these numbers just come in today with us in a meeting at 1 o'clock. So there wasn't time to prepare you or, you know, the rest of us to know about that change. That change is a good thing. What was it, the 300-something thousand on one fund come in a little higher than we thought?
The TISA funding is going to come in about $155,000 greater than what
Yeah.
the prior month's estimate was.
I mean, that's the whole purpose of doing this budget meeting thing earlier. You know, getting the board involved, committee, is you've got time to be able to iron through this instead of ramming up into the middle of June and expecting to get something done in a week.
And also, in getting from 2.8 down to 2.1, that is projected with use of equity for debt service.
With debt service. And keep that in mind, the debt service, it's a one-time, you're using the payment for debt service to balance the budget. So that's going to roll to next year. That will be there. But again, looking at this, these numbers are not right, you know, they're not accurate enough to look at and be able to determine. You could probably eliminate some of these things with the new projections, correct? You know, some of the cuts, I mean, in order to balance it. I mean, you just can do what you want. If you want to sit here and decipher through it, but for me, it would be easier to come back in 3 or 4 days and have all this updated with the new numbers and then have a discussion on it. So you're not confused and you know exactly what because this is serious stuff, and that's just my suggestion.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, I agree, but I will add a few things. I don't know about you all, but mine and Ryan myself and Ryan have fielded phone calls all day long over some misinformation. I don't know which board member done it, but it's not okay to call a news outlet and present inaccurate information, especially when we just got this newer information tonight. I went through page by page, line by line of the 141, and I'll get to that in a minute. I have noticed, you know, when you look at the numbers Fifth District hasn't lost numbers. The loss is happening on this side. White Oak has went down a little bit, but I'll tell you, in thinking about White Oak and El Valley, White Oak people will go to Clearfield. Clearfield's not going to close. And Campbell County school system will not get those student dollars. They will go to Clearfield. El Valley, I would say 50 to 60% of those students, parents drive them. They'd be just as happy to drive them across the state line or go to Fairview for the ones up top. So, you know, closing these schools are not going to be a guarantee of saving money. You're going to lose money, or it's going to be a total wash. I don't know, but I do know these people back here, they come to support their schools, and I'd say you ask 10 of them, they'd tell you they'll take their kids to Clearfield, they'll go across state line. Or some of them where they live at the top of Belt Valley, they'll take them to Fairview. That's not what they want to do. They want to stay home. But all this was created again by some misinformation to the media. I don't know if it's anybody on this committee, I don't know. I'm not calling anybody out, but it was really unprofessional, not, I'll just be honest, I've talked to several people, and if it happened in other counties and other boards, they would be just as mad as I am about it, because it caused a lot of anxiety, a lot of upset, and I love talking to my people, and so does Ryan. But for them to be unnecessarily upset like they were all day, it was totally uncalled for. But back to looking at this line by line, there's a lot of things that can be cut here besides this. We've got decreased number of students countywide, but we've increased or kept the same number of staff. You know, that's, to me, if your students go down, you don't need as many principals, you don't need as many staff in here. I've talked to a few different school districts on how they combine stuff. There can be some combination of duties. I just don't feel you need to target the fifth when, you know, a lot of it's countywide. So, you know, there's other things you can look for. I got a call the other day, or I read it. Richard, was you telling me about 2 aides maybe being cut to get an ESL, was it you? Some kind of ESL position or something? Am I right on that?
An interventionist retired, and we
Okay.
use that funding to hire an use it to hire an ESL teacher who was hired at the end of this year or after Christmas, because our ESL numbers went up.
Is the number 65 correct? Or 70 for ESL students?
I would have to look in Aspen. And
because
they're at different schools, so you have
Right.
to travel to different schools.
Yeah, you travel, but let's see, the numbers I've got are 11 at Campbell County High School, 6 at Jacksburg, 9 at Jellicoe Middle, or Jacksburg Middle, 13 at Carrollville, 20 at La Follette Elementary, 3 at La Follette Middle, and 3 at Valley View. None are on my side of the mountain, so traveling would be over here, and that's just something to think about before adding another position that may not last a year or so, because, you know, that number fluctuates too.
Well, that is what we have to put into E-Plan. That is,
It's required to have 3 when you have that many students, because they are required, each student is required to have 1 hour of service as an ESL student.
If you
That's a
would,
state
just
requirement.
present that schedule to the budget committee.
I would be
So-
glad, I have it upstairs, I'll be glad to get it,
Okay.
and
Okay,
give it to
going
you.
forward,
Madam Chairman, real quick.
yes, sir.
On the article this morning, I get up pretty early, and I read it, and I'm just gonna say this as plain as I can. The director of schools is the spokesperson for the school system. She's allowed to say whatever she wants to say on her capacity. I, as chairman, am the spokesperson for this board. That went out today, nobody knew these plans until a while ago. Now, for plans to be shared on media that to my knowledge you hadn't shared with nobody is ridiculous. These people are here because of what they read, and we had never even been entertained a plan yet. Now, I'm gonna say whoever that was that wanted to speak on the condition of anonymity, you just stand up and own it. You're an elected official, and you need to stand up for what, if you want to say that, then you stand up and say it. Because you put this board and me in a position that's uncalled for. This is already hard enough, folks, without adding a lot more to it. And me and her have spent weeks dwelling over this budget, and I know that. I have. I can't sleep at night. And for that drama to be added is just ridiculous. It's uncalled for, and if I knowed who it was, I'd bring you forward with ethics charges with this committee, because I think you violated the policy, and you went beyond your grounds of beyond me being the spokesperson for the board, and it clearly states. It clearly states that if you're going to make an opinion outside of the board, then you've got to state who you are, and that it's your opinion, yours only. So that was not thought of that well. It was a disservice to this body, and I don't appreciate it. We're better than this. I mean, we've got to do this and work together, and so that's all I've got to say. I know I'm emotional about it, but again, this is hard stuff. This is people's lives you're dealing with here. And you know, trying to score one don't go over well with me. I'm not a politician, and again, don't know who it is, don't really care at this point. If I did, I'd do something about it, but I doubt they'll come forward. But you know, with that said, you know, I too think that there's different ways you can approach this. The ESSER positions, they were intended to be for so long, and you know, people knew kind of going into it that they might go away. So then people have to kind of know that it might have went away at some point in time. But it's a work in progress. That's why we're here today. And we've got plenty of time to get it together. And like I told Ms. Fields the other day, if we don't, me and her go to jail. So I don't intend to go to jail. Do you? So we're going to get it done. And you know, that's just it. I mean, it's real simple, but we don't need all this other distractions. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's all I've got, Ms. Creekmore.
Okay. Y'all got a question. And if you could get this for me, Jennifer, like central office staff. I'd like a list of everybody in central office and what they do.
Okay.
You know, because like I know like Tracy over there's maintenance, transportation, CTE. She does a lot of.
Yes, I
You know,
have.
You see what I'm.
I have
You
it.
see what I'm saying? If we could get that. And on this, on the 11 interventionists,
Yes.
how many of those are retiring? That you
Only
get hired?
one.
Only one.
Well, there were 12, and the one retiring is the one we were going to use to fund the
Okay.
ESL
Now,
position.
are we gonna have to place them back? Are they tenured teachers?
They're tenured.
So you'll have to
They will
place
have to
them back
be,
into the
yes.
classroom? Is that, the
The-
savings here, is that gonna shift over to?
No, that would be the savings
Okay,
of their.
okay.
I would just like to say, I'm glad to see everybody tonight. I hate the circumstances. I think that is a really cowardly act, and that's disturbed your all's day and my day, and it's cost you an evening. And but I said last year that I will fight for the fifth, and I will fight for each and every one of you. So I'm glad to see you.
Madam Chair, if I may. First thing I'd say is, you know, I think considering this is a $2.1 million deficit is a mistake. Kicking this can down the road is exactly what it is, kicking the can down the road. And, you know, I run a business every day. I cannot run my business that way. And so as far as, you know, looking at it as a $2.1 million budget deficit, I cannot do that. I don't think that's a fiscally sound thing to do. I don't think it's the responsible thing to do. As far as commitments that we've already made, we made commitments in the past to, you know, based on what we felt like we should do going forward for the future. I do not believe that commitments that we've made in the past should be considered in fixing a budget deficit that is money that's recurring and going forward, and I cannot support any means of doing that. And that not just because that facility is at Campbell County High School. It wouldn't matter if we committed to do that facility or if it was, you know, back to a field in Jellicoe. turf in Jellicoe. I just cannot support that, with all due respect. And no one has, so I don't think that's been discussed by this committee or anyone else on the board that I have any knowledge of. Fact is, going back to Campbell County High School, Campbell County High School generates money for this school system every year, and I will fight every day for that. It's a fact. The numbers are there and can be shared, and I think everyone's seen that. Campbell County High School may have lost a few students, as the other schools have, but it still generates a lot of money for this school system. And athletics and sports, the correlation between the two is undeniable. The students there have a GPA of 3.0, and I cannot go back to them and tell them that I'm not going to support their efforts, especially academically and athletically, to succeed. Can't do it. I would like to say that, and publicly say that I did not share anyone with any media outlet, nor have I ever. So, and if I did, I would say I did it. So I just want to be real clear about that. So my name should not be in consideration of doing anything of that effect or to that effect ever since I've been on the board. So, I look forward to working with you guys to try to fix this thing, but I would strongly encourage us to look at this as $2.8 million. It's just, I feel like the right thing to do. And, what scares me is what, as Jeffrey mentioned, when we get to next year, it's going to increase and be more. And when you're talking about 2.8 and you go to a 3.4 or whatever, or $4 million, I mean, that's devastating to us. And there's just, we may have 9 million, but that's a devastating number to us. That's all I have.
Did everybody get their emails this morning from Mr. Miller? I just found my copies here. If anybody has any questions on that while Richard's here. And Randy, I never thought it was you because you were known to sign your name, so.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Okay. Richard, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Not at this point.
Mike? Did you-
The only thing I would say to Mr. Heatherly's point is, I completely understand you said I would never ask you of that, and I can appreciate that, and all of our voters and stakeholders would appreciate that also. But I would never have you do that. I would never say, hey, we need to invest more in this luxury item when people's livelihoods are at stake, or a basic education for the children of any of the school system, right? I would never say, hey, we should spend this much for sports and recreation and not let our kids be educated. I think that's a very poor decision there. And not only with the sports complex, not to say, hey, that can never happen, but to postpone it for the time being, I think is completely acceptable. Because if you can't make your bills, you don't go buy more stuff. You stop buying. And whenever you look at priority, I feel like the mission of everybody in this room is probably a quality education.
7 committed. Well, we have eked that on different stuff down to about 1.1. And the project's estimated cost $2 million. So, even if you did try to get that going, you're going to have to come up with another $800,000 from somewhere and that could be discussed later, later on down the road.
Absolutely.
But I agree with you. Using equity to balance the budget is a no for me. I am not, no way, no shade, no how. Because you're going to pass the buck, and then next year it's going to be greater. And then with the voucher system coming in, this school system is in for a bad time. And no way will I ever support using equity to balance. I'm not going to do it. Now, I'm not on the committee, but I'm on the board, and that's how I'll be. So that's my input.
Any other comments? So I guess need to make a motion to send that back to with accurate updated numbers.
Recess to a later date.
That's what I would recommend, Madam Chairman. Just recess the committee till,
Recess it until.
you'll announce a date in the future, and then you can update the numbers.
We will, do I have a motion to recess for later to be determined?
I'll make a motion to recess.
So moved. You have to call the roll on that.
Whitmore?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Fields?
Yes.
Heatherly?
Yes.
Wheeler? Yes. Motion passed.
It's over now.
Well, if, just before everybody moves on to the next topic, I'm not on this committee, but this is important. One of my employees' mothers passed away. We had her funeral at 5, so I just wanted to apologize to my fellow board members for being a little tardy.
Okay, meeting adjourned, or recessed, sorry.
Recess.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all.
My baby's on.
To find out a date, we'll let you know.